So another question I got from a commenter was from Harish Chauhan. I think that's how you pronounce the name, and I do apologise if I haven't. As the commenter says, man, this is the best review for this camera so far, especially the manual settings part. Thank you for that. Regarding the manual setting, can it be adjusted while in video mode? So this is quite an interesting question. Also, have you tried recording time lapses in manual mode? I haven't really attempted photographing and taking things in time lapse. I've not really used it that extensively. I've really only used the camera out on the go and taking quick pictures and things, and that's what I love about it. You know, it's just something that you can just take out and you can just quickly take pictures and stuff. Like, say for example, I've got my DSLR and I've got my 70 to 200mm lens plugged into it. I might want to take a wide angle shot. I would have to change the lens. In terms of the settings, the manual mode, yes, you can. However, it's something that is not going to change with light. And I've seen a lot of sort of people's reviews. People love the fact that they can walk around and they change from one room to another, how quickly the camera adjusts. That's because it's set on automatic settings. The automatic settings is adjusting the aperture, shutter speed, ISO to match with that. And someone did comment and they said something along the lines that they couldn't understand why there was so much grain noise in that regard. It's because the fact that when you take the camera into a darker area, the automatic settings is raising the ISO by a considerable amount. And because when you raise the ISO, you're losing quality. All three adjust with light. However, when it adjusts the ISO and raises the ISO, you're introducing a lot more grain noise to the image, and that's partly the reason why. Anywhere from 800 and above with this camera, and you do start to see grain noise being introduced. But you know, I love the camera. I think it's a fantastic camera. It takes some fantastic images. I wouldn't expect it to be something like my 5D Mark III body camera, but it's, you know, fantastic for what it's worth. And yes, you can adjust for using video if set up on a tripod and you have the camera still, then it's useful for that type of video. So the next question by Miss Mimi, who asks, hi, could you tell me something about, does this camera flip the photos? I'm sure you know what I'm talking about, like some phones flip your photo when you capture it, especially selfies. I think what you mean is the fact that when you capture a photograph with your iPhone, it flips the image and it mirrors the image. I think that's not so much to do with the actual camera built into the iPhone. I think that's partly to do with the software. I found that the camera app in the iPhone reverses the image for some strange reason, whereas Facebook takes it normally. Another important point that I would like to address, and that I didn't touch upon before, is the fact that certain applications, from what I'm aware of, that you can pay for with your iPhone, that allows you to manually adjust your aperture, your shutter speed, and your ISO. I'm not someone who really used my phone in that regard, and even if you do come across the issue with images being mirrored, you can reverse that using anything like photo software, and I tend to use Photoshop anyway. I do a lot of sort of image editing. Now here's an interesting question by Perry's Theatre. Perry's Theatre says, great video, I've noticed this camera adjusts to lighting very often to a point where it looks unprofessional in people's videos. For example, if I were recording in the direction of the sun and slowly turned my body the other way, then the camera would make obvious adjustment to change in lighting. I can't stand how that looks when people have that in their videos. With that being said, is there a way to prevent that sudden change from happening so frequently? It just makes a very amateur look when I see that in YouTube videos. This is simply because the fact that what people are using is automatic settings. If you're, you know, photographing in the direction of the sun, or taking video in the direction of the sun, the camera automatically adjusts to match that. But then when you turn away in the other direction, obviously light's going to change. The light's not going to be quite the same because you're not photographing into the sun, you're photographing away from it, or shall I say video. And therefore what it does is it changes the light automatically. Really, again, it goes back to that whole thing and what I responded in the previous question about Manual mode in video, yes, within video you can adjust for manual settings so that you can adjust to one fixed thing. However, it takes a lot more work in what you're going to record. So I got a question from Ocean11 which was quite interesting with regards to the resolution. I think resolution is, I don't know if it's slightly different within video, but anyway, Scott, I have gotten this camera last month. It was a hard catch. Seems everyone no stocks, and so I got reserve it with the shop or whatever. And he says, what he would like to check with me is A, which is the recommended megapixels do you set for photography? I think it really depends on what you're going to use it for. The reason why I say this is because I tend to use the maximum megapixels that I can get possible out of an image, because there's flexibility afterwards. Reason being is because the fact that I can then take the image and then edit it within Photoshop and choose whether I want to use it for the web or use it for something. But you're talking about something relative to PC or an LED TV. You would use the maximum you could get possible that shows very high quality, and you can see that. Plus the fact is, if you're going to get one of those images printed, and let's say you got it blown up at A1 size or A3 size for a photograph, you're going to get the best quality out of it. You would be very restricted if you took images at a lower resolution. When you go to get it printed in a larger size, it'll look very pixelated, and again it's the same thing with the resolution on your screen. So that's the advantage of taking images at higher resolution anyway. If, however, you were doing a specific job that was just quick, it was just something that you wanted to send through emails, it was just saying, oh look, here's an image, you want to see what this such and such looks like, here's a quick picture, take the picture and quickly email it, just to give a sort of a sample to someone for whatever reason that may be, then you may take it in a lower resolution. But that's the difference, because when you take an image at a higher resolution, then you have that flexibility to downsize it. So that's the difference between capturing an image. And the good thing about the camera, the G7X Mark II, is the fact that it allows you to also capture in RAW format. And that's something I can perhaps explain more in detail when I go into doing a video on that specifically, why RAW format is just simply wonderful compared to capturing just a simple JPEG image. Following on, as you said, B, is 1080 60 frames per second the video options to choose? Yes, there is. If I remember right, there's something to do with the American version that allows up to 60 frames per second. So in the settings in the G7X Mark II, you have to adjust it to, I think it's NTSC, is that right? NTSC, you move it from PAL setting over to NTSC and it allows you 60 frames per second. For some odd reason, set to PAL settings, the maximum you can get is 50 frames per second. I don't know why that is. So another YouTuber by the name of Exovity asked the question, can the camera make coloured stills, or is it just black and white? Yes, you can. You can capture in either or. I mean, there's a certain setting you can set it to monochrome so that it's just going to be fixated. When you capture the picture, it'll just be black and white. I tend not to do that. I tend to photograph in colour, and therefore in the raw image, the raw file, because I set the settings to capture in RAW and JPEG so that I've got both. And what I tend to do is I tend to capture the coloured image, and then I have that option in the raw settings whether I wish to convert it to black and white or not. Alan Peterson asked the question, great video Scott, I enjoyed the slow motion video at 5 minutes into the video. Did you do this through post-process editing, or does this camera have a setting for slow motion video? It's something within the camera. It does have certain creative settings that allows you to record video within slow motion, but more often than not, I would just tend to record normally, and then within, you know, Adobe Premiere, within post-processing, I would look to edit that myself. That's just something that's my own preferred option. I tend to find that easier to do, and therefore I've got more flexibility. Whereas if I recorded video in slow motion, there isn't really that same flexibility, and that's kind of why I kind of do that in the post-processing. So as Mohammed Hamidi asks the question, hello again, could you please explain the best setting for this camera? Regards. It's very, very difficult, because what you need to remember is that every room that you go into has different lighting. Every environment that you are in has different lighting. So it really depends on what you're photographing. It depends on the environment that you're in, and therefore that's why it's such a big advantage to understand the manual settings to adjust the lighting to suit to gain the right exposure. This is something that if you're recording video and you're doing vlogs, then automatic setting is fantastic because it will just adjust that for you itself. An example would be sports photography. Now, like I've mentioned before, sports photography is really all down to creative in your choice. Whether you want to capture something that's slow shutter speed, or you want to capture something that's more of a fast shutter speed, that is all down to your own choice. It all really depends on what aperture you're set your camera at. Now on DSLRs, you've got certain lenses that have the widest aperture at 2.8. Well, in this camera anyway, the G7X Mark II, because I don't want to throw you off, but let's say you're photographing a subject that is landscape and you want to capture long distance, then you're going to require the narrowest aperture on this camera, which is f11, right? That's what you want it at because it's going to be an extended depth of field. Now, if you stopped your aperture down to f1.8, it's a shallow depth of field. See, this is the thing, because shooting for a landscape image, a shallow depth of field is going to be no use, because the fact you're not going to capture everything else in focus in the background. However, at f11 you'll notice less light is let into the camera, and therefore you would have to compensate by using a slower shutter speed, but that requires using the camera on a tripod. So an interesting question I got from Santosh Gurung, who asked the question. He says, great video pal, quick question, how to use the manual focus? Can you use the front ring for manual focus? Hold the actual shutter button in halfway, don't press it. What that does is it focuses, right? So whilst you're holding it in halfway whilst it's focusing on a particular subject, adjust the ring at the front of the Canon G7X Mark II, and you'll notice on the screen that it will basically enable you to adjust the focus manually on whatever it is you're going to photograph. So a question I got from Cool Doc says, great video mate, thank you. He says, I just take casual photos on auto, but this helped me with the basics of manual settings. I use this camera only on family trips for the still photography. I don't care about video or other high-end features, example 4K video, electronic view finder, etc. I only want the highest image quality. So is this camera the best in its price range? Yes, I mean, in terms of what this is used for, as you say, you really only use it for family photography, just something like taking pictures and like keeping memory and stuff like that. It's so compact, it's small, it's, you know, for something that's so versatile. It can go from 28mm, which is wide angle, taking wide angle shots of family photographs, or zooming in. I think if you zoom right into about 100, you would probably get an image, an aperture of 2.8. Again, that really depends on what you're going to photograph. And yes, for £600, I'm telling you this, for something, and I kid you not, see, for something at 1.8 aperture, for example, I have a 1.2 aperture. No, in fact, it's a 2.8 aperture, right? This is a 24 to 70mm lens, right? This is just a lens I've got. A 24 to 70mm lens, Mark II, and it's a 2.8 aperture. In other words, that's the widest it opens at. You'd be amazed how much you would pay for, you know, a wider aperture, such as a 1.8 or a 1.2. You pay a lot of money. So the fact that you have something that goes from a 28mm to 100mm focal length, and you have a wide aperture of 1.8, it's fantastic for what it is. It's worth, and it takes good pictures, and for what you use it for a family and just taking pictures and stuff like that, and you're really not interested in all the stuff like 4K and stuff like that, yeah, it's fantastic. You would love the camera. So another question I got was by Alejandro Avalos. As the question they ask is, can I set this up in a tripod and take photos of myself with a self-timer? Yeah, you can. I mean, there's nothing stopping you from doing so. You can set it up in a self-timer and set it on a tripod, and there's no problem with that. I think there's also these selfie sticks you can get. You've probably heard of them. They're things that you can stretch out in front of you and take pictures of yourself in that regard. But if you're wanting to use a tripod, yeah, it's useful for that. So anyway, folks, thank you for watching my video. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you do have any other questions that you would like to ask me, feel free to ask me in the comment section below, and I'll be sure to get back to you. But, you know, at the end of the day, as I've said, it's a fantastic wee camera. I wouldn't say it's for someone who is looking to use it for professional use. I don't think that's ideal. But for starting out, if you're going to start out in photography, I recommend going for a crop sensor DSLR, and that's something. But for those who go on vacation, and hell, I'm someone who's looking to do, you know, photography as a career, and yet even I went out and bought it, and I use it for certain things. It's fantastic for on the go. So anyway, folks, thank you for watching my video. Like I say, give the video a thumbs up if you like the video. If you like my channel, feel free to subscribe, and of course I shall talk to you later. Right, talk to you later. Cheers.